Hi all, last gesture video here. So the last strategy I'm going to show you is the spiral gesture strategy. Sometimes they also call it a scribble gesture strategy. This strategy is really designed to efficiently convey the volume of a body. It makes use of the transverse path or axis of the body. We've talked about the longitudinal midline, so that is the center, the vertical center line of the body that all shapes are symmetrically mirrored across. So longitudinal kind of means long. It's reaching the length of the body. So, the longitudinal axis of any of our body shapes are going to be kind of aligned with the long bones of our body, pulling down the length of body forms. All right. But the axis that moves across the body, it like traverses, it then sort of moves through the body kind of like cross sections, is called a transverse axis. When you're dealing with a long form, really kind of any form that feels more vertical than it does horizontal in terms of like how you think of the forms, finding a mark that actually moves across the transverse of the body can be really helpful to kind of change the way the viewer looks at a long form, instead of the eye sort of rushing down the length of the longitudinal axis. Transverse mark making sort of keeps the eye moving across the form, and the directions that those transverse lines make really can effectively convey dimension much faster than just showing light and shadow without regard of giving your marks a direction that relates to the body itself. I might be getting ahead of myself a little here. Let me demonstrate a little bit about what I mean about marks that relate to a transverse axis. So on this arm, I've sort of striped it up. I took a piece of charcoal and I drew it around kind of like bangle bracelets, wraps or loops that connect across my arm rather than moving down the length. All right. Now the idea is that these lines are always perpendicular to the long axis of the shape and moving, functionally horizontally across the transverse of my arms. But because my arm is not a flat form, it's dimensional. It has volume that could honestly be most likely described as cylindrical or conical in the forearm, and kind of a mixture of sort of flat and rounded planes through the back of my hand, right? Those horizontal lines don't really present as horizontal unless I'm holding them up straight up to face you. And even so, you can see how as the roundness of my arm sort of moves away from our point of view, those lines start looking like they might be tilting up or tilting down, sort of smiling or frowning at you as it moves towards the side planes. And starts turning towards the back plane of the arm. If I tilt that arm away from you, these same marks don't look like they're horizontal so much at all. They really present as fully rounded arcs. Here, as that arm recedes from the view, you see them frowning at you. As I tilt it back and sort of tip my hand towards you, you can see certain marks kind of smile at you. If I come around and give you a projecting angle, you can see the bottom edge of those transverse marks really seem to arc up and smile at you. It's hard to get that view. But what you're seeing is depending on perspective, but also position of the body. Those marks that here feel pretty much parallel and pretty much horizontal have a lot more dynamic direction. All right. So in the next gesture drawing, we're really going to play with an efficient way to make those transverse marks. It'll take a little bit longer in the duration of these poses. I believe that the video I attached includes 5-minute timers. If it doesn't, go ahead and pause the pose and set a timer on your phone for 5 minutes. That's the usual duration that we plan for this spiral gesture process. Specifically because we do it in 2 steps. We start it repeating that same line gesture strategy that I demonstrated in the last video. Then we come back over with a transverse mark. It's easier if I just show you. We'll do this in vine charcoal. We'll also have our chamois ready to pull some highlights. And you might also choose an eraser to kind of finish things out and pull in some even brighter brights if you have time. So have those 3 tools on hand. All right, with that, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Again, I'm watching through the camera, so I'm not in your way and you can see this demonstration, but sometimes it means my marks get a little wild. Hopefully I do okay on this complex pose. So here we go. Starting with the line gesture, I'm gonna get the overall sort of movement of the length of the body. I'll then come back in with some functional shapes to establish my rib cage and pelvis. From the pelvis, I'll keep it simple first. I'll sort of draw out the length of the leg, running into my reference. That's okay. Just keep going. We don't compromise form if we run out of shape. We just keep drawing it. I'm gonna get that knee pulling out, that other shape pulling through, connect it with some simple foot shapes, coming back up. I'll get all the way up to the head. I notice there's a little bit of overlapping form there. I'll come down and get his resting arm first. Seeing there is specifically a bit of perspective on that arm. I will get to emphasize that with my strategy later. Coming back through, maybe adding a little bit of structure, getting a shape for the upper arm, lower arm. It cuts back to create a hand shape. Not too shabby. After I come back through, I might do a little bit of edge correction before I shift strategies. We really want the shapes to be in the place that we need it. Again, sorry for that overlapping form. Let me see if I can move that out of the way without causing too much disruption. I think it's in my view still. Okay, I'll go ahead, refinish that shape. Again, we have a little bit more time for this gesture. All right, so once I've worked that through with a line gesture, then what I'm going to do is I am going to use a rocking mark. This rocking mark is going to represent the transverse of the form. And I'm going to manage its direction, kind of thinking about where I see that center line of the body and matching the angles, rocking up from edge to edge. As I see a shape sort of turn, the head turns a little, I'll modify my marks. As I start moving towards the dome of the head, I'll modify it again. As I work through these shapes, I'm really thinking about this surface of the paper as having that volume. I have to rotate my mark in order to reach around these forms. I am changing the direction to show how shapes are receding when I move through a shape where there's a joint and that shape changes direction, I also change direction of my mark. All right, coming back up, I'll get through that other leg. This leg is receding slightly. So I've modified the arcing movements, and I'm working my way down the leg. That's probably is kind of the least movement of those legs. All right, coming back up, there's a little bit of projecting foreshortening on the upper arm. There's even more. So I'm rounding out those marks on the lower forearm. And then I'm finishing it out with a new direction representing the hand. All right, coming down. Again, you can always, if you're not sure which way the transverse is going to go, you can always redraw a center line to kind of help you think about what would a perpendicular mark be doing. That's like you've drawn the long bone. And then you can sort of rock your way back through the forms. All right. And then we have quite a voluminous body shape.